Leaning back on her chair, Shiro was completely silent while the mob of villagers shouted obscenities at her. Their cries of injustice and the supposed actions she performed echoed across the lantern, but Shiro didn't say anything. She wanted for them to get everything off their chest before she tried to persuade them. After all, she doubted they would listen to her while still harboring all this anger in their heart. Their slander is pretty annoying, Nimue said as Shiro could see anger building up within her. Yeah, I know, but they're just victims in this. From their perspective, I am indeed the person who caused all this misery in them. You know my personality. If I was in their shoes, it wouldn't end with just shouting obscenities. Shiro replied. Thinking back to this, Shiro envisioned herself standing in front of Ikari at this moment. The moment she envisioned herself in this situation, killing intent threatened to burst out from within her. However, Shiro managed to control herself as the villagers would no doubt be traumatized by her killing intent. It was not something ordinary people could handle. Shaking her head, Shiro swept her gaze across the now fatigued crowd who tired themselves out from all the shouting. I believe we should be able to have a normal conversation now. My only question to you is, if I'm the same person as the one who did all of this to you, why would I bother listening to you? Helping you return to your normal form after being melded together into those puppets? Shiro asked as the villagers paused for a moment and started to discuss amongst themselves. And I know what you're also thinking. You look just like her. It's a little complicated, but you can just think of us as two people who look the same. Now, with all of you finally calmed down, I hope you can answer some of my questions as to what you want to do from now on, Shiro said as she stood up and dismissed the chair. Most of the villagers were still skeptical about her identity, but the fact remains. She helped them, and she's not doing anything to them right now. Seeing that most of them have settled down and were willing to talk, Shiro smiled and clapped her hands. Fantastic. Now then, shall we discuss your future? I have 3 paths that you can choose from. The first path is standard reincarnation. I can make it so that you return to the flow of life and be reborn. However, the process might be a little painful or soothing since I need to repair your souls, Shiro said as a door labeled reincarnation appeared next to her. Option 2 is revival. If you have any attachments to the current world and want to keep living, you may. I will reconstruct your soul and body so that you can live as you once did. Naturally, if you pick this, there is a chance you might be captured and transformed back to puppets since I can't guarantee anything. I'm not your personal bodyguard after all. Finishing her sentence, the second door appeared with the word revival etched on the surface. If the first choice is reincarnation and the second is revival, what's the third? A voice called out from within the crowd. After all, there's nothing else beside reincarnation and revival. The third choice is for you to fight. I will revive you and then equip you with some special equipment to help you fight and survive. In return, you will work for me while I remain in this world. You will travel from place to place fighting puppets and giving the souls within a second chance at life with the choice of 3 paths. Essentially what I'm doing for you now. Shiro smiled as she could see some young men being interested in the third option, but their fear was obvious. Naturally, if you work for me, your safety is guaranteed. You will not die because I will give you a tiny goddess on your shoulder to protect you while you work. I can't have my workers dying on me now, can I? Snapping her fingers, a tiny Shiro appeared on her shoulder and gave the crowd a cute little wave. She is your own personal murder fairy if you run into danger, and she will also help me keep an eye on you to make sure you are doing your work. Don't worry, I won't be peeking if you go to the toilet. Shiro joked to relieve some of the tension. No, the tiny fairy has more than enough power to keep you safe and kill puppets. If you run into anything stronger, it will send a message to me, and I will send more of my power to help you survive the ordeal. If you doubt my power, just know I'm a goddess and I can kill anything and everything. Seeing the cheerful smile on Shiro's face while talking about slaughter, some of the villagers couldn't help but shudder at her demeanor. In this aspect, she was no different to the Shiro that turned all of them into puppets. While the villagers decide amongst themselves which path they wanted to take, Shiro turned her attention back to real life as her little stunt should have attracted some unwanted attention. After all, if puppets were sent to monitor the situation and they suddenly disappear, she would investigate the location personally. Peeking out from her lantern, the area was oddly quiet, as though there was nothing wrong with the location. Do you think they gave up and didn't care? Shiro asked as Nimue shrugged her shoulders. It's definitely strange. There should be another wave of puppets at the minimum, but for there to not even be a speck of movement is odd. Furrowing her brows, Shiro excused herself from the lantern world. Kneeling down, She placed her hand against the ground and sent out a pulse of energy, detecting every living thing or construct above and below ground within several miles of her location. Shiro frowned as she realized it was only her and the puppets around this area. Nothing else lived here. Entering the lantern world once more, Shiro tried to get an answer from the villagers, but their memory was hazy from their time as a puppet, so they couldn't give her an answer. "Excuse me," a voice called out as Shiro glanced over and saw a middle-aged man with scars around his arms. "Yes, my son is a scholar. He should know a lot about the world. Most of us are just farmers or hunters in the countryside, so our knowledge is limited. If you go north and find the city of Hazel, my son is a student there. He should be able to help you." The man replied as he hoped Shiro could ensure his son's survival for the reward of knowledge. I don't see why not. Usually, I would have asked you to seek him out yourself using Path 3 if you're worried about his safety. But I am in need of information regarding this world. Lead the way and I'll do what I can to ensure his safety." Shiro smiled. Before the man could respond, a few of the other villagers tried the same tactic, proclaiming that their children are more knowledgeable than his. However, a silent warning glare from Shiro was enough to make them shut up. They didn't have the incentive to take the initiative. Therefore, they can seek out their relatives themselves by picking Path 3. As the rest of the villagers finished choosing their paths, Shiro could see that many of the elderly chose to reincarnate, as there were no relatives or attachments left in this world, while most of the adults picked Path 3. Naturally, there were also quite a few that picked Path 2 for a myriad of reasons, but Shiro didn't care and respected their choices. She wasn't going to force them to fight if they didn't want to. Taking care of those that wanted to be reincarnated first, it took till the middle of the night before she finished reconstructing physical bodies for the villagers. While they set up camp, Shiro sat down and took a deep breath before sighing. While she wasn't fatigued physically, she was exhausted mentally. Most of the people that didn't want to fight are still going to travel with us for a little while so they can settle down in a city. After all, new puppets will most likely replace the ones that disappeared today, and their safety is not guaranteed. I don't get them though. Why choose Path 2 when 3 guarantees their safety? Nimue crossed her arms while observing the villagers. Well, some are just sick of fighting. Me and you are used to it. So our instinct is to choose Path 3. But do remember that most of these are just civilians who worked odd jobs to survive. Shiro chuckled as she thanked one of the villagers for bringing her some cooked food. She had brought out some supplies. She had left some food in her inventory just in case. She went on an adventure with Een, and it was more than enough to feed the villagers. Keeping watch for the night, Shiro was glad the villagers managed to get a good night's rest after being tormented as puppets for so long. Floating in the air at the break of dawn, Shiro sent out her senses to see if there were any more puppets coming their way. But from the look of things, they were going to have an uneventful journey. Right now my magic is being limited, so I can't rely too much on my nanobots. Shiro thought to herself as she summoned Vinri and adjusted her form to be that of a necklace. Using Vinri as a medium, Shiro started to gather creation mana between her palms before clasping her hands together. When she separated her hands, 4 tiny birds could be seen on her palm. Each of the birds were created from a luminescent blue energy that flickered like a fire. "Is that spirit summon?" Nimue asked curiously. "Similar, but not quite. You know how I'm able to call upon the surrounding spirits to enhance my attacks or spells in general? Since that uses destruction mana, it's probably going to be limited, so I figured I'd try with creation mana. And the result is these creation spirits. They harness the ambient creation mana and send me information. I've also mixed them with the essence of wind, so they should be invisible to most detection spells with the added benefit of increased speed." Shiro replied as her range of detection had increased by around 20% just by having these birds around her right now. Raising her hand, the 4 birds flapped their wings and started to fly in different directions. Shiro was going to use them as a scouting party of sorts, so she could get a better idea of the world of creation. How big it was. What's the current state of the people? Are there any gods, queens, or large factions nearby, and so on. Plus, it could provide her with a map along with planting teleport markers. Landing back on the ground, she started to lead the group to the city of Hazen with the help of the man with the scars on his arm. His name was Gazer, and he was a small hunter in the village. Before all the puppets took over, the city of Hazen was known for its arcane studies, even for a small village like ours. There's some rumors I heard of the city, but most of it was exaggerated, so I'm not sure if it's true or not. Gazer apologized as Shiro shook her head. It's fine, don't worry. Any kind of information is beneficial. I'd rather have somewhat of an idea of what the city is like. After all, it could have turned to shit with the puppets roaming around the world like this. Shiro thought to herself, if Hazen is really a city famous for their magical prowess, how likely is it for them to survive this world? Nimue asked, as she wasn't sure how they would fare against the puppets. She had no clue how the magic was in this world. That's a good question. So far, the scouts that I've sent out haven't detected anything yet. Most of the landscape is littered with puppets that seem to be doing nothing. They're not even turning their heads. Do you think they're under orders? Shrugging her shoulders, Shiro didn't know what to think of the behavior of the puppets. But if they were doing nothing at the moment, she'd let them be. Of course, there's always the option of rescuing them as well, but she didn't want to make any more large movements. If she attracts too much attention to herself before she achieves her goal, this would be a wasted trip to the side of creation. After a day and a half of constant traveling with no puppets trying to attack them at all, Shiro finally discovered a city in the distance with her scouts. However, it was different when compared to what Gazer explained, since it was completely destroyed. Any skyscrapers that would have stood tall are now collapsed with debris littering the streets. Nothing like the glory of the magic city that he described. That can't be, Gazer muttered in disbelief. But it shouldn't have been that long. Why is the city gone? He shouted as Shiro realized something that she should have asked much earlier. Gazer, answer one question for me. Shiro called out as Gazer looked back at her. How long were all of you stuck in those puppets for? Upon hearing her question, every single civilian that followed her froze up. Some of them had a suspicion considering how much the greenery had grown compared to what they remember, but they dismissed it as someone's magic. But now that they had a moment to pause and reflect on the question, they realized that tens of years, maybe even hundreds of years, could have passed by now. It would circumflex Epsilon. While everyone started to discuss amongst themselves, Shiro had a better idea. Taking a deep breath, the world around Shiro started to lose its color once more as details blurred into lines of code. Focusing on Gazer's code, Shiro narrowed her eyes and started to look at his records. Similar to how she can see the composition of objects and modify them, she can also see the history of a person. Currently, the information she can access is a rough summary, since if she were to look at the entire history, it would overload her with the information of his entire life leading up to the current moment. It's a bit blurred since his time as a puppet was when multiple souls were melded together into a being. But I should be able to get a rough estimate. Shiro thought to herself. 78. Pardon, Gazer blinked. 78 years. That's how long everyone has spent within the puppets. It's no wonder that the city has been reduced to ruins. Shiro sighed as she could hear many of them mutter in disbelief. She couldn't blame them since 78 years was a long time. The loved ones that they were looking forward to meeting might have died already or been reduced into puppets themselves. Instructing everyone to take a break for now, Shiro placed some sentries around the place while she explored the city herself. She doesn't know if there are any hidden dangers, so traveling alone would be safer. As she entered the city, she could imagine the majesty of this place before it was destroyed. A quick glance at the codes told her everything she needed to know, since she could recreate the layout of this city in her mind. What a shame, Nimue muttered as Shiro agreed. Indeed. Honestly, I'm tempted to integrate some of the structures into Asharia since they'll fit quite nicely. Flying around the city, Shiro noticed a strange yet faint energy signal within the buried ruins. Furrowing her brows, she jumped down to the location where she felt the signal. Waving her hand, she gathered energy into her palms and created a path downwards with a single blast. Asterisk cough cough. Pushing away the smoke, Shiro could see a single device at the bottom that was unfamiliar to her. It seemed too advanced for the technology she could see from the city, yet not as advanced as her nanobots. Her curiosity was piqued as she grabbed the device and searched for a button or anything that could turn it on. What do you think it is? Nimue asked curiously as Shiro fiddled around the device. Dunno. I'm scanning it with my nanobots right now, and it seems to function like a tracker, but the composition is unlike anything I've seen before. Understanding that the device was low on power, Shiro gathered some of her mana and powered it up. With a flash of light, a holographic map appeared around her with a red dot, showing where they are. Blinking her eyes in surprise, Shiro didn't expect to see a whole map of the world along with zones being highlighted as deadly, dangerous, mild danger, and survivable. Well, this is certainly something, Shiro muttered. Do you think the people who used to live here moved to one of these safe houses? Shiro asked while interacting with the map. On the map, Safe houses, safe water supplies, and several bases were marked down, while there were clusters marked in the danger zones. Not much information was written on the map, so Shiro wasn't sure what they meant, but she could guess that it was a large gathering of the strange puppets. Seems like it's split into two tiers, clusters and colonies. Do you think the puppets are basically glorified worker ants? Nimue asked as Shiro shrugged. She didn't have much information to work from right now, so she couldn't make an accurate guess. Just as she was about to close the map, Shiro noticed a string of words on the map, developed by Lyrica Valenstein. Lyrica is here. Nimue widened her eyes in surprise. I'm not too sure. It might be Lyrica from the side of creation. Shiro shrugged. Since there was a Shiro from the side of creation, there was naturally going to be a Lyrica here as well. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to try something out. No, Nimue interjected as she could already tell what Shiro was planning. PFT, it'll be fine, plus I got an idea on how to mask myself, so don't worry. Shiro laughed as Nimue squinted her eyes. Weren't you the one who said you didn't want to draw too much attention to yourself? You realize that tracking someone through the whole of this world draws quite a bit of attention to yourself. Didn't say I got it covered? Don't worry so much, Nimue, Shiro said dismissively as she jumped up and made her way to the tallest building within the city. Closing her eyes for a moment, Shiro opened them once more as the world disassembled into lines of code. Holding the map in front of her, Shiro traced the codes to find out where it had been created. Focusing her mind, Shiro filtered out every single piece of useless information she didn't need since she only wanted to know where it had been made. If she can find out where it was made, she can track down Lyrica's code. If she finds that out, she'll be able to see if it's the same Lyrica from her world or not. Shiro could feel a headache gnawing at her mind as she scoured through the history of the map. Every revision, every use, every person that held this map brushed past her mind. Eventually, she found the start point, the moment in time when this map was created. From the look of things, Lyrica wasn't directly involved with the creation of this item. It was mass-produced, and she provided the map. If I locate the factory where this was produced, I should be able to find some clues. Shiro thought to herself as she closed her eyes and let them rest, rubbing her eyelids with a slight frown on her face. Shiro felt like she had not given her eyes any rest for days on end, even though it was just a quick moment. You're pushing your eyes a bit too much with that ability. Try to limit it if you can. I'm trying my best at keeping your eyes functional, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't give me more work to do. Nimue sighed while helping Shiro fix her body. Yeah, sorry about that. However, we're not done just yet. Huh? Nimue blinked as she felt a sudden chill. If I look for the factory then track her down, it'll take a bit too long to resolve. But if I was to, let's say, search for every moment Lyrica was mentioned in the codes, Shiro said as a smirk crept up on her face. Naturally, I don't need to know the full history. I just need to find certain parts and try to track where she's been. That way, it'll eventually lead to where she is now. B. You do realize that even though you're saying you're just going to track Lyrica, in order to do so you're essentially reading the history of the land, right? Do you even comprehend how much pressure that puts on your own brain? Even if it's you, I doubt you can handle all of this information. Nimue glared as she felt like her vein was about to pop from both anger and stress. After all, she was the one who had to make sure Shiro's body didn't break down, including her brain. Oh, I know, and I know it'll be fine, you got this. Shiro grinned and gave her a wink. Without waiting for Nimue to lecture her more, Shiro slammed her hands down as she summoned Vinri in front of her to channel creation energy. Sparks of lightning flickered around her, destroying some of the debris scattered around. Focusing her mind, Shiro created 4 large satellites using a mix of nanobots and creation energy. While they're not as advanced as the satellites back in the world of destruction, they'll suffice for what she wanted to do. Infusing Error's energy into all 4 of them, she snapped her finger and sent all them flying through the sky. In order to not let them get discovered, I need to mask their energy signals with the energy of this world. Make it seem like they're part of this world rather than a foreign entity. Shiro thought to herself as circuits appeared on her arms. Focusing her sight on the satellites, she manipulated their code just slightly so that if people were to send out their senses, they wouldn't sense anything odd. She didn't need to do a full rewrite, just something akin to a blanket to hide its true nature. As the satellites breached the atmosphere, Shiro could feel several eyes sweep past the satellites, but eventually disappeared. It worked. Shiro grinned as this was just the beginning. Sending the satellites up was just the preparation phase. Get ready, Nimue, Shiro laughed. Pound and carrot percent pound, and carrot percent I know. Nimue cursed as she started to circulate her mana in preparation for the chaos that was about to happen. Seeing that Nimue was ready, Shiro activated error, and the world lost its color. Each of the satellites worked as her eyes as a miniature model of this current world appeared in front of her. Taking a deep breath, she overlaid the map that Lyrica had made over it to see the differences. The first step was locating the spot where the device was created. Since she had scanned the codes earlier, it was rather simple for her to locate it. One of the satellites orbited the world until it was directly above the factory, firing a concentrated beam of energy. A flood of information entered Shiro's mind as it caused to stumble back before she quickly regained her footing. The beam would take a quick imprint of all of the code within the area and fire it into Shiro's brain so that she could filter through it all. F***CK. Hearing Nimue cursing in the distance, Shiro focused her mind and scanned through the code. Dismissing everything she didn't need, she eventually found a single trace of Lyrica. Quickly memorizing the code for that interaction, Shiro canceled the spell immediately. Collapsing on her back, Shiro felt extremely lightheaded as a small trail of blood could be seen dripping from her nose. Take a break. We'll continue this later, Nimue shouted as Shiro nodded her head. Even though she was reckless, she knew that pushing more than this would be stupid. She'll rest herself for a bit while taking the civilians to the closest safe house. Once they reach the safe house, any who still want to join her can join her while those who wanted safety could remain at the Sage house. Plus, that'll give her some time to digest the information she had just received in order to properly track where Lyrica was. Once she had a moment to rest, Shiro started to make her way back to the civilians. Upon arriving, she could see that a few of them had lost hope in their eyes, especially Gazer. Staying silent for a moment, Shiro sighed. I will take you all to the closest shelter. With the technology that I've seen, you might be able to find a register or something of that kind. You might find who you're looking for or their descendants. I don't know. If you wish to be reincarnated, I will grant you that wish, Shiro said as they thought to themselves for a bit. Most of them chose to decide after they reached the safe house, while some chose to be reincarnated. Helping those who wanted to reincarnate, Shiro started to lead the rest of them to the safe house. I found this in the ruins. A highly advanced map showing you where the safe houses are as well as your current location. It also shows the danger zones for you to avoid. You can take it since I've already memorized it, Shiro said as she offered the map to Gazer. Seeing that he had no reaction, Shiro scratched her head for a moment before briefly glancing at the group. And I mean this is a big if they have a register of the people who are still alive, I can take a moment to mark down their energy and put markers on the map for you. That way you can track them if you want. Shiro sighed as this seemed to reignite some hope in their eyes. Giving the map to Gazer, Shiro started to lead the group once more. However, she suddenly noticed that the world around her seemed to have stopped. Everyone was frozen in place except for her. Time stop. Shiro frowned, as this was something similar to what she could do. Why are you here? A small voice rang out as Shiro instantly recognized it. That's all you have to say after almost killing me last time? Shiro rolled her eyes as she looked up. Above her, a flickering phantom could be seen. Their body was in tatters, but Shiro could still recognize the white hair. It was her own after all. The Shiro from the side of creation. You should have just stayed in your own world. Do you realize what you've set into motion by stepping into this realm? She muttered as tears started to flow from her eyes. Tears. Shiro blinked her eyes in confusion. What started can't be stopped anymore. As expected, not even you can escape the cycle she set out for us, ha ha ha. What's done is done. I'm sure you can track me down whenever you want now. Make it quick. Shiro chuckled in defeat. Her eyes seemed to be devoid of hope as a wave of sadness could be seen on her expression. Find the other foreigner that arrived. I can only delay things for so long, and she's already overstayed her welcome years ago. Looking at her own phantom body that seemed to fade away some more, the Shiro from the side of creation forced a smile before snapping her fingers. Suddenly time resumed its flow as Gazer looked at Shiro with confusion since she suddenly stopped walking. Sorry, was just thinking about something. Shiro dismissed with a wave of her hand before leading the group again. As she was walking, her expression was serious as she was thinking about what her other self was trying to say with her words. I can assume the foreigner she mentioned is probably Lyrica. Seems like it's the Lyrica from our world after all. Seems so. But the main issue is what's been set in motion. She mentioned a cycle that someone has set out for you? Well, I assume she means the different Shiros. Nimue frowned as she had expected the other Shiro to be fully hostile towards them. After all, their last interaction was a matter of life or death. Let's just call her Shiro. See or something. Last time we saw her, she wanted me dead. But now that we've invaded her world, I suppose, she's suddenly not hostile anymore? What's more is that she seemed saddened by it. If I set something in motion by stepping into this world, shouldn't the same rule apply when she entered the world of destruction? Shiro thought to herself, as there were too many mysteries surrounding Shiro. See, too much information she didn't know about yet. Do you think there's a chance that the Shiro mentioned is referring to chaos? Nimue asked curiously, as there probably wasn't anyone ranked higher than Shiro except for chaos. After all, Shiro was originally the firstborn of destruction. Maybe, but I highly doubt it. As for the cycle, I have half the mind to think that she's mentioning the life and death of worlds. With this being the final world before everything is reset, maybe she's talking about that. Shiro shrugged. However, without a proper conversation with Shiro, she won't be able to figure out what she meant. But as Shiro had said, it's relatively easy to track her down, especially now that they've come face to face. Shiro had memorized her aura and energy signal. If she wanted to track her down, it'd be a simple task. But the first thing on her agenda was to take these civilians to safety, then find Lyrica. Leading the civilians to the safe house wasn't too difficult since it was just a matter of walking. None of the puppets seemed to have an interest in them, which made the journey a lot safer. There was one instance where a puppet came close but turned around and flew the other way, almost as though they've been instructed to leave the group alone and avoid at all cost. Strange, perhaps I should capture one of them to read the code, then rescue the souls. Shiro thought to herself. At least wait till you finish resting. You've been spending every moment recovering from the side effects. And if you weren't resting, you were trying to track her down. Nimue said as she felt as though she was about to collapse from exhaustion. While Shiro got to rest, she had to spend every moment repairing her body and mind. That's true. I should also give you some time to rest since you've been working nonstop. You don't say. It's basically slavery at this point, URG. Nimue complained as she continued to heal Shiro's body. She was looking forward to the break she was going to get. After all, the role of healing Shiro was about as stressful as things can get. Shiro is always on the verge of breaking down, and it's a miracle she's even lasted this long. Once her body had been healed fully, Shiro called for the group to rest, so that she could take this time to satiate her curiosity over the puppet's behavior. Now then, where's the closest test subject? Shiro muttered as she conjured up 4 scouts, sending them out. It wasn't long before they spotted one. Waving her finger, the scout that spotted the puppet transformed into a net and captured it in an instant. Retrieving the puppet was no issue. However, just as Shiro was about to read its code, the puppet's history seemed to be completely blank. It's almost as though it was just created the moment she captured it. There was not a single record of interaction except for the one right now. Beta. Furrowing her brows, Shiro frowned slightly before massaging her neck. Seems like someone's trying to mess with me. Though that's to be expected considering the fact that the puppets are trying to run away like I'm the plague. Shiro shrugged. I mean, that's not incorrect. Shaking her head, Shiro set aside the puppet before snapping her fingers and sent more scouts to survey the area. The moment her scout discovered a puppet, she traded positions with it. Boo! Curling her lips into a grin, Shiro reached out and grabbed the puppet by the head. Circuits exploded out from her arm and injected themselves into the puppet, copying the full history of its code in one go. F***CK, I thought you were going to give me some time to rest. Nimue shouted out in anger as she noticed the pressure Shiro was putting on her brain. Slight change of plans, don't worry too much about it, Shiro reassured, causing Nimue to hold back the urge of throwing something at her. Once she was done with copying the code, she grabbed the puppet and teleported back to her original spot. With 2 puppets now on hand, she separated the souls, repaired them, and gave them the same options she gave to the others, all while Nimue was hurling curses at her for giving false hope of a break. With the group now expanding in size, Shiro gave them a rundown of what was happening and started to guide them towards the safe house once more. Reviewing the information in her mind, Shiro was confused once more. Shiro, C is instructing them to avoid anything resembling a certain mana signal, which is mine. And if they are caught by anyone, their history will be reset so that no one can get any information from them. Is she doing it to stop me from finding out anything? Shiro thought to herself. It seems like she has her own reasons. Even if you two were enemies before, she did tell you to track her down, so she'll most likely explain in due time. Possibly, though it seems like she's doing all of this to stop the flow of information in any region we're in. Shiro frowned, shaking her head. She decided to take her time with the information she gathered to fully digest it and figure some things out. ####. Sighing softly, she glanced down at her hands. While her right hand seemed normal, her left was akin to cracked porcelain, breaking away slowly with each passing second. Snapping her fingers, a wave of energy washed over her and hid her wounds. With Shiro's movements and the extermination of several puppets within the area, it's bound to create a commotion, even if she tried her best with covering up the actions. Are all the foreigners this reckless? I have to cover for both of them now, she thought to herself in annoyance before taking a deep breath. She had some hope that things could be resolved peacefully when there was only one foreigner. But now that a second one had arrived, and it's Shiro no less, resolving things peacefully was no longer an option. Standing up, she made her way out of her room and glanced at the mountain in the distance. Teleporting to the top, a lone woman sat on a stone throne while glancing at the moving clouds. Some of the puppets have died. I went to check out the situation, but they move fast. They managed to evade my detection. Shiro, she said as the woman opened her mouth slowly. Another incident? Just make sure it doesn't affect paradise. Wanting to say something, Shiro. She just nodded her head and left the area. Paradise, huh? Shiro, she muttered before letting out a hollow laugh. Hovering in the sky, Shiro glanced at the plains in the distance and frowned. This is the safe house. There's not a single building in sight. There doesn't seem to be anything underground either. Shiro thought to herself with a frown. She had already sent out her senses, but detected nothing wrong with the area. To her, it was just a normal field. That shouldn't be the case. Unless the map is outdated? Nimue asked as Shiro shook her head. She still remembers the code from the map, and the last interaction before she came along was relatively recent. Granted, by recent it was still tens of years ago. This is concerning. Floating down, Shiro called for Gazer and asked for the map. She wanted to see if the map could receive updates. If they have a network set up, she'll also be able to gather more intel. Thankfully for Nimue, this didn't require her to read the code. It's been a while since I last hacked something, but it shouldn't be too difficult if there is a network. Shiro thought to herself. Vinri shimmered for a moment. Creating nanobots using creation mana. Shiro watched as they entered the device. Closing her eyes, she could picture herself in a strange virtual space. Unlike the digital space that she used, this was similar to the mana realm within her body. Only instead of being confined in the body, it's linked to the world around them. Just like how codes make up the composition of the world, mana covers the world like a blanket. Unless it was a special area, mana fills the world. This virtual space makes use of the mana and carries information through the flow and updates the information just like how the internet would work, only that it wasn't confined by the limitations of hardware. As long as you can use mana in any capacity, you can access this network. Naturally, it wasn't as though everyone can just gain all the knowledge since they'll die from the huge influx of information. They require careful control over their mana to extract exactly what they need. Remarkable, Shiro muttered as she didn't expect someone to set up a library within the mana network similar to how she sorts out information in her own mind. This made accessing information easier, but the more secretive intel required a key. If you wanted to access the information without a key, you'll either need to overpower the mana network as a whole, be given special permission, or have such precise control that you can bypass the locks. However, the library itself seems to be in the beginning stages as there were still a lot of information adrift in the mana flow. The network is in the infancy stages, so it's pretty easy to establish a connection. If I relink the map to the network, I should be able to get an updated version. Shiro thought to herself. Waving her finger, she etched a few runes into the device and re-established the connection. Now then, let's see the updated map. Shiro smiled as the map flickered briefly. Some of the safe houses disappeared, while red danger zones started to spread. However, despite all that, there was still a safe house in front of them. Tilting her head in confusion, Shiro frowned before trying to pull up some records regarding the safe houses. Strange. They said it's underground, so I should be able to detect it with my mana sense. But there's nothing. Shiro wondered to herself. Do you think they're using something that blocks mana? Nimue asked as Shiro shook her head. Unlikely. If they were to be using something like that, it'll only cause them to stand out more. Picture it like this. There's a painting, very detailed, and in the middle of the canvas, there's a blob of paint. While it matches the surrounding colors, it lacks detail. If they were to be using something that blocks mana, I would be able to pick it out rather easily. Opening her eyes, Shiro explained the situation to the group. Eventually, they decided to survey the area in case there's something they might have missed. It was better to try than to skip it over without trying. With everyone searching the plains for any hints of a clue, Shiro kneeled down and placed her hand against the ground, sending out several pulses of mana. Shiro traced out what was below ground, but nothing strange appeared. Strange? Well, when in doubt, check the codes. Shiro chuckled as Nimue sighed and got back to work. Closing her eyes, circuits appeared on her arm before digging into the ground. A wave of information flooded into Shiro's mind, causing her to flinch slightly before recovering. Pausing for a moment, Nimue was confused by the lack of reaction. She had noticed it while they were on the trip here, but every time Shiro read the codes, her tolerance levels continued to increase. It was abnormal even for Shiro standards. To put it into perspective, it's like seeing someone eating one bowl of food, then almost passing out due to fullness. Then the next day, they can eat another bowl. The day after that, they eat 3 bowls. The speed that her tolerance is growing is simply too fast. Is it because of what Shiro mentioned? Something that has been set into motion. Perhaps it's affecting Shiro as well. Nimue frowned. However, her thoughts ended there as she still had to help Shiro maintain her body. After all, just because her tolerance has increased doesn't mean she was now immune to the effects. Found it. Shiro smiled. After reading the codes, Shiro realized what had happened. In order to avoid detection and hide their safe houses, the remaining humans used camouflaging materials to make an elevator. Since they were only trying to hide a small elevator shaft, it was easy to put more resources into hiding it properly. The actual safe house was buried deep underground. While it was still within the range of Shiro's detection, they camouflaged it well enough to the point where it was almost indistinguishable from the surrounding mana. Shaking her head, Shiro sighed inwardly. I'm too dependent on error. If I had tried a bit harder, I would have found it without the codes. Shiro shrugged as she stood up. Looking at the circuits on her arm, Shiro contemplated to herself for a brief moment before turning to the group. I found the entrance. We won't be able to move all at once, so I'll head down first to set up an anchor point for teleports. I'll leave you with a clone of myself to keep you safe while I take a look at the situation below. Shiro called out before snapping her fingers. Quickly creating a clone of herself, Shiro set up a quick camouflage so they won't be discovered. Making her way over to where the entrance would be, Shiro thought for a moment before shrugging her shoulders. There shouldn't be a problem if she used her original appearance, right? Plus, it's better to resolve some misunderstandings early instead of later. Arriving in front of the gate, Shiro snapped her finger, causing a portal to appear. If a random group found a map, how the hell are they supposed to enter? Nimue asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, pretty much everyone that's not in a safe house is dead or part of a puppet. Only time they would need to enter would be when travelers from another safe house arrive. You need a basic network key in order to activate the portal, Shiro replied while stepping into the portal. The exit of the portal was deep underground as she arrived in a rather large room with 2 elevators and a camera in the corner monitoring what was happening. Hello, anyone home? I got quite a few survivors above ground. Would you be so kind as to bring the lift up? Shiro smiled and waved at the camera. Seeing as there was no response, Shiro guessed that they were either not around or they saw her face and panicked. Either way, she was going to make her way down and see how things were in the safe house. An elevator wasn't going to stop her. Phasing into the spirit realm temporarily, she walked through the elevator doors and jumped down. That way she didn't damage anything. The fall downwards was surprisingly long as she didn't expect them to build the safe house so deep underground. Though if they wanted to be safe from detection, this was the least they could do. After a short period of falling, Shiro could see the elevator at the very bottom and slowed her descent. Gently tapping against the roof of the elevator, Shiro phased through the roof and walked past the doors. She expected to see the side of the city, but instead was welcomed with a myriad of spells. This is quite the hostile welcome. I only said hello. Shiro shrugged with a smile before opening her mouth and blowing out a mouthful of air. Asterisk crack. Suddenly, all the spell circles shattered apart, causing the casters to gasp in shock, while Shiro stood there motionless with a smile. Let's talk now. Seeing that some of them were planning to run immediately once they saw that her attack failed, Shiro sighed deeply and stomped her foot down. Suddenly, a wall of mana erupted around them, blocking off their exit. Did you not hear what I said? I just want to talk. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I'm here to kill everyone because I'm evil. But I can assure you, I am not here to do that, Shiro explained. Waiting for their response, Shiro's eyebrows started to twitch since no one was replying to her. It was akin to talking to a brick wall. Do any of you have a leader or someone I can talk to? I'm being honest here. I'm not here to fight you. Shiro massaged her eyes as she couldn't be bothered to keep up her act if none of them were going to humor her. If you just want to talk, why are you disguising yourself as Shiro? One of them shouted out. Pardon. Shiro blinked her eyes in confusion. If you were truly here to talk, you wouldn't disguise yourself as her to gain our trust. Standing still, Shiro was trying to register what she just heard. Wait. So you're telling me the other me has your trust? As in the one that had to burn down a village? Shiro scratched her head. Nimue, are you hearing everything right now? I am. Seems like there are more layers to this than we anticipated. But there's no denying that Shiro did indeed burn down a village. Do you think maybe she had her own circumstances? Maybe. We'll probably get some answers if we talk to them some more. Okay, before we talk about what the other me has done, I want you to believe that one. I am not disguising myself as her. We are basically the same person, but from different worlds. 2. I have a group of civilians above ground, and I hope that some of them can seek safety here. We came to this location due to a map we found and repaired. Shiro explained as they looked at each other hesitantly. From what they saw earlier, if Shiro really wanted to kill them, she could have done so rather easily. There's no need to go out of her way like this. All right, we'll operate the elevators. While we do that, please follow me. A red-haired youth said as Shiro nodded her head. As she was following him, Shiro couldn't help but marvel at the underground city that they had created. Even without looking at the code, Shiro could tell that the materials used for building the houses were still rather fresh in the grand scheme of things. Ancient cities, even after being restored, would still exhibit signs of age. Most of the houses in this city/safe house was embedded into the walls with large bridges connecting major buildings together to one another. While there was no natural light from the surface, Shiro could see strange glowing crystals that radiated with a blue glow, blanketing the whole city in a soft blue light. The streets of the city had warm orange lights that highlighted the road. The contrast of soft blue light above and warm orange glows below reminded her of a city in the night. So how did you lot find this place? From what I can tell, the only thing natural here is the large cavity in the earth. Shiro asked curiously. You really aren't her, huh? The youth glanced back as Shiro shrugged. No, I am not. Though honestly, I'm a little curious about what all of you think of the Shiro of this world. Where should I start? He muttered while thinking to himself for a little while. I don't know the full story since I wasn't born when it all happened. But if you want, I'll tell you what we have been taught. Honestly, the elders can probably give you a better idea of what happened than I can. Rao, I don't mind. It'll make the journey there interesting. Shiro encouraged as he nodded his head. So according to the history books, the world wasn't like it was right now. Everyone lived above ground and could wander the lands freely. However, that came to an end when waves of energy started to pulse out from the planet's core. The mana within people started to run rampant, as any spells they tried to cast would cancel out or backfire. It was unsure how long things lasted, but eventually, people started to fuse when they came into contact with one another, creating the monstrosities that roamed the lands now. Our ancestors had collaborated to find out what was happening in hopes of discovering a cure. As Shiro listened intently to the youth's retelling of history, she could tell that he was skipping out on a lot of detail due to bad memory, but she got a rough understanding of the timeline. After the pulse of energy turned people into monsters, those that had more mana than others were lucky and managed to survive. They quickly set up a network thanks to a genius mage. She was the tower master of the greatest mage tower and was responsible for a lot of the advancements they made today. They had discovered that the pulse was to weed out the weak, and those who could not stand against the pulse were turned into the strong. Several leaders of the Alliance set out across the world to create as many safe houses as possible so that humanity could survive. Despite what a lot of people said, the safe houses underground worked, and they were free from the pulses that could turn them into monsters. During this time, they set up relays that helped them transfer supplies between safe houses. The current safe house was one that was set up by Shiro. Even though she was technically working for the other side, she had tried her best to save as many as she could and sent them towards this safe house. She would supply as much as she could while making sure the existence of this safe house was hidden from the enemies. Recently, however, she hasn't been appearing as often as before, and that was when the current Shiro showed up. I see. Thank you. Shiro smiled as the youth nodded. I never focused much on history when I was in school, so this was about as much as I can remember. Like I said, the elders can give you a better recounting on what had happened. What I told you was just the surface levels of history. He shrugged. We've arrived. The elders are inside. They've been expecting you. Stepping aside, the youth stood by the doors. Glancing at him briefly, Shiro couldn't help but notice a hint of annoyance every time he glanced towards the doors. Seems like he dislikes them. Though considering the fact that I didn't see them at all, and the Elders' building is the furthest from the entrance, they might have done this so they can escape quicker. Shiro thought to herself. Yerg, so they're probably annoying old B** stars with 1 foot in the grave then. Nimue frowned. It's just a guess. Nothing concrete. Waving her finger, the doors opened by themselves as Shiro stepped into the Elders' Hall. The hall itself was majestic and reminded her of the depictions of King Arthur's Round Table. There were 5 seats elevated on a platform with statues behind each seat. The first statue was holding onto a sword that was stabbed into the ground with a shield on their back. The second was a mage. The third was a rogue with 2 daggers. The fourth was someone who looked like a healer. They had vials strapped to their waist and the mark of the healer on their jacket. The last statue was a smiling man with hair like a lion's mane. He had sharp canines and wielded a giant axe on his shoulders. Welcome, honored guest. We had been informed of your sudden arrival and the request of having multiple survivors enter our city. Is that right? The elder in the middle asked as Shiro nodded. It seemed like he was the head of the 5 elders. Yep, I'm just here to drop some people off before I go look for a comrade of mine. So do you think you can accommodate them? Shiro asked. She was going to try to keep a good relationship with them for now since she'd rather not make life hard on the survivors if they were going to stay here. Resources are stretching thin already. I'm not sure we can accommodate more mouths to feed. Short-term would pose no issue, but long-term, the first elder frowned. I'm sure we can make do. We have plenty of farmland. With new additions, we'll be able to expand a little more and harvest more crops. It'll take a while to happen, but we can push through the time it takes without issue. The third elder tried to persuade. Before the discussion could get sidetracked, the head elder cleared his throat. We can discuss the logistics of more survivors later, but let's focus on the topic at hand. What is a woman like you doing in this world? Especially one that came from the other side. Oh, seems like you know of my origins. Shiro raised an eyebrow at the head elder's sentence. Years ago, there was an attempt to establish connections between the 2 worlds, and that was due to an experiment caused by the Tower Master of the Mage Tower. She had attempted to establish a connection to the Mage Tower of another world. The details of this experiment were free for everyone to see, but incidents happened, and she is no longer around to continue the experiment. The head elder sighed. Thus, while we do know the existence of another world, we don't have as much information as we would hope. Hearing this, Shiro was silent for a moment. She had an inkling to what this experiment was about since Aram had done the same a while back. The connection was never established fully to the point where people could cross over, but some items were possible. I see. Well, good news for you, the connection was linked to the Mage Tower that a friend of mine had created. But as to why I'm here, first it was to find my other self. Second was to increase my mastery over the energy of this world. Shiro smiled as she waved her hand, and a stream of creation energy filled the room. Though getting a quick history lesson was a nice little gift, I was told that you could give me a better recounting of what had happened. We can give you the information you want. However, if that's everything you are here for, we must discuss the costs of accepting this many survivors. The first elder spoke up as Shiro glanced over. Seeing the silent acknowledgement that the other elders were giving him, she could tell that this had been on their mind the entire time. The previous talk on her goals was just an act since what she wants to do has nothing to do with them. Even if it did, they couldn't stop her from doing it, and they know that. Sighing deeply, Shiro could see why the guy earlier seemed to dislike the elders. While their actions do make sense, it still caused her to shake her head. I will help you expand your city and make farmland for you. Would that be satisfactory? Shiro asked. How much farmland would you be providing? F***ck it. Just follow me, and I'll show you. Shiro rolled her eyes as she couldn't be bothered to talk to these kinds of people anymore. The only thing on their mind is costs and benefits. However, she wanted the survivors to have a good place to stay, even if these elders are the ones at the top. Plus, it wasn't as though she couldn't monitor this place. She had given all of the survivors, she helped a small helper that would notify her if anything was to go wrong. If something did go wrong, she can project an avatar of herself where the helper was in order to resolve the issue. Seeing the elders hesitate, Shiro clicked her tongue and snapped her fingers. Suddenly, all 5 of them were teleported in front of her. Surely your legs work, right? Now follow me. I don't want to waste any more time than this. Understanding that Shiro was getting annoyed but still willing to give them the benefits they were asking for, the 5 quickly followed behind her. Tisk, their behavior is disgusting. Nimue furrowed her brows. Well, what can you do about it? Sadly, these 5 are the strongest in this city. Their mana is head and shoulders above the rest. While it's nothing compared to the soldiers of Asharia, They're the big shots in the city. Losing them would be an issue for the residents here. Shiro shrugged. Leaving the Hall of Elders, Shiro walked towards a cliff that had a good view of the overall land of the city. Glancing at the cave walls, she tapped her foot a few times, sending out small pulses of mana so that she could map out the whole place. Bringing up a small hologram of the entire city in front of her, she glanced back at the elders. Tell me where you want the farmland. She spoke bluntly while letting them handle the hologram, watching them pick where they wanted more farmland. Shiro couldn't help but feel her eye twitch at their greed. This should be all the land we need to stabilize the supplies. The head elder coughed embarrassingly, since even he knew the other elders picked a little too much. If Shiro helped them set up this much farmland, they would have enough to help another safe house with their food. Arbino. All right. Taking the hologram, Shiro projected the image over the entire city. Using it as a base, she snapped her fingers. Magic circles appeared around the cave, flickering with a dark purple glow before turning clockwise. In just a blink, huge cavities appeared where the magic circles were. Flicking her finger up, several stone pillars shot up, supporting the ceiling. Waving her hand, lights that simulated the day and night cycle appeared above the new farmlands along with protective barriers that blessed the growth of plants within the boundaries. This should make harvesting food easier for them. Plus, all of it is powered by ambient mana that circulates through the world, so they don't need to provide extra to keep the farmland going. It was essentially the same as any prime farmland above ground with increased growth and quality guarantee. Plus, they could adjust the conditions so they can better grow a variety of crops. There are instructions on how to use the farmlands in each terminal that I've placed by their entrances. It's connected to the mana network all of you are using, so you can use it how you see fit. If there's nothing else, I'll be heading to your library to get more information. Oh, and send someone to give me the most detailed history books you can find, Shiro said as she started to make her way towards the city. When she had scanned the city earlier for them to plan the farmland, she had also marked down where the library was so she could get some information before she left. After all, that was one of her goals. She wanted as much information she could get her hands on. You understood. The head elder nodded his head as he was still in shock of what Shiro had just done. A single wave of her hand, and she modified parts of the city without breaking a single sweat. Now that she was finished with them, Shiro had a smile on her face while walking toward the city. Glancing towards the entrance, she could see that the civilians were being brought down to the city in small groups since the elevator couldn't accommodate everyone in one go. Her gaze flickered for a moment as her vision shifted to that of the clone she left with the civilians above ground. Seeing that things were going smoothly, she continued to let the clone operate. Just to avoid a bit of hassle, Shiro changed her appearance a little so that the ordinary citizen wouldn't recognize her. After all, to them, Shiro was someone who saved them from the monsters above. She just wanted to get some information and didn't want to deal with crowds of people right now. While walking through the city, she observed how they lived with intrigue. Due to the nature of the underground city, life here was very different from above ground. Every single shop had a 24-hour rotation, and the internal clocks of people seemed to match this. From what she could tell by the schedules written on the opening times, night and day had roughly the same amount of traffic. People could choose which cycle they wanted to abide by since there was work to be found at any time. Soon, Shiro reached the library. The building itself was rather camouflaged since you could only see the entrance from the outside and the words library carved into the walls. However, hidden behind this plain exterior was a large building with a total of 6 floors, and each shelf was packed to the brim with books. Hello, how may I help you? The receptionist smiled before pausing in surprise since she had never seen Shiro in the city before, which isn't surprising considering the fact that Shiro had a disguise on right now. I'm looking for books on history. Shiro smiled. All right, the books on history should be on the 4th floor. Once you get up the stairs, take a right turn and follow the path. It should be the 4th shelf that you see. Thank you. There should be someone looking for me later. Just let them know I'm on the 4th floor. Shiro smiled as she dismissed her disguise. That way they'll have an easier time to find her. Widening her eyes at Shiro's appearance, the girl froze up in surprise as she watched Shiro make her way to the 4th floor. Ignoring her gaze, Shiro found the section she was talking about and grabbed a few books that caught her eye. There was a table by the railings that gave her a good view of the interior, so she decided to sit there while reading the books. While reading the books that she had gathered, it didn't take long for the person sent by the elders to find her. Here are the books that you've requested. The elders also asked me to pass this letter to you, he said as Shiro nodded her head before dismissing him and opened the letter. This book is a diary rather than a history book. It wasn't given to us, but rather Shiro left it here and never took it away with her. We tried to give it back, but she rejected. Hopefully, this gives you some insight. And don't worry, this book isn't the original copy, so you can deal with it however you wish. Raising an eyebrow, Shiro waved her finger and burned the letter before glancing at the diary. She had a general gist of the history of this world after reading the books, and it wasn't too different from what the youth told her earlier. Aram, Helion, Madison, Lyrica, Sylvia, Chinyu, Nantion, and everyone else all existed in this world. However, they passed while trying their best to keep people safe. From what she could gather, their strength was lacking compared to the ones she knew from the side of destruction. The only one that was left is Shiro. See, thinking to herself for a moment, Shiro grabbed the diary and opened it up. Glancing through the words, Shiro realized that this was Aram's diary. It detailed all of her experiments, her knowledge on the puppets, and what potentially happened to this world. While it wasn't anything she didn't know, Shiro could sense Aram's passion and her personality through the sentences she wrote in the diary. According to Aram's hypothesis, the pulse of energy that occurred was very likely a byproduct of an awakening that tipped the world balance. When she attempted to link both worlds together with her destruction self, a change started to occur. The objects around her seemed to become unstable as an unknown energy source would slowly corrupt them, taking over little by little until the balance was tipped, and the energy took over, causing the object to turn into ash. Naturally, humans, or any living being, aren't exempt from this effect. The closer you are to the source of this power, the more the body will degrade. It'll slowly harden from the inside out before breaking away like porcelain. In Aram's own words, when the two energies were separate, the strength did not matter since the energy didn't come into contact with one another. However, due to her experiments, it may have set off a catastrophic domino effect that caused the two to meet. Now, whenever someone is exposed to this energy, it's like a tug of war suddenly happening within their body. Naturally, if either side gains the upper hand, the balance will be tipped. For the residents of this world, their body is entirely composed of energy from their world. If creation energy gains the upper hand, nothing will happen. But if destruction gained the lead, their body would break apart. At first, the momentum of this energy was slow. There was only one source, and that was the Mage Tower. Quarantining it off was simple, and treatment for the initial stages of what they called mana corruption was effective. All it took was to empower the body with more creation energy to keep the destruction from growing further. Later, they discovered that Shiro's strength was key to fend off the mana corruption. Her own mana affected the world as a whole, and the stronger she was, the easier it became to keep this energy at bay. Unfortunately, she could not keep up with the growing strength. Shiro tried to resolve this quickly, and they managed to devise a way for her to travel through the connection they had created. Unfortunately, it meant that she would be suffering from a large exposure of destruction mana, thus they needed to make the trip short. Then one day, everyone got a notification. With a single crack, the destruction energy flooded the world, and everyone was infected by mana corruption. Omicron ES. Shiro's strength could no longer keep up. The diary from this point on was rough and blurred. From the handwriting, Shiro could tell that Aram's strength was fading at that point. As the person closest to the original source, her mana corruption had to be the deepest. But even with the blurred handwriting, she could still pick out some words. Shiro, contract, upgrade, strength, second pulse, fusion for creation. Closing the book slowly, Shiro leaned back and looked up at the ceiling of the library. F***CK. She muttered with a deep sigh. With her knowledge of what she's been through, and now paired with the knowledge of Aram and the history of this world, Shiro understood that her own abnormal growth, especially her awakening as the firstborn of destruction, caused the balance to tip within the side of creation. As her awakening was premature and much sooner, Shiro was not able to prepare properly. Had it been the other way around, perhaps it would be their world suffering from the influx of creation. Seems like Anima wasn't wrong, huh? Just tipping the balance and causing the other side to try their best to catch up would bring destruction. To think my growth would actually doom an entire world without me ever knowing. And it's actually the side of creation, no less. I wonder how Shiro felt, seeing her friends disappear one by one, knowing that it was the Shiro from the side of destruction causing all of this. Shiro thought as Nimue was silent for a moment before opening her mouth, but closed it without saying anything. She didn't know how to react to this knowledge and how to help Shiro. Bah, ignore me. It was unavoidable anyways. It's why I'm striving for balance now, right? So that the universe isn't tipped towards the path of destruction. Shiro shook her head and stood up. Looking at the diary, she decided to keep it for now and place the other books back to where they belong. Making her way out of the library, she closed one of her eyes and remotely controlled her clone. Quickly finding Gazer, Shiro told him to relay her message to the survivors. She was going to journey alone to find her companion, and this clone will serve as a bodyguard. If they wanted to journey out, they could either use this clone or the mini Shiros she gave them all. Without giving him a chance to say no, Shiro teleported back to the surface. Stretching her body, Shiro took a deep breath of fresh air before closing her eyes. We're going to do this in one go, Nimue, she said suddenly. We're going to scan the whole world in one go so I can locate Lyrica. Do you even hear yourself right now? This is actual suicide. I have a plan. Reading Aram's diary just now gave me an idea. I'm going to help you with keeping my body from breaking apart. I'll be drawing creation energy from the planet in order to reinforce my regenerative powers. I don't need to use destruction mana since my body is made from it. If I do it well, I should be able to keep it directly in the middle so the tug of war within my body doesn't stop. Shiro smiled. She had to succeed in this. The sooner she brings a balance to her destruction powers, the faster this world can heal and stop itself from edging closer to oblivion. It will give Shiro a chance to potentially correct things in this world. Shiro had the plan in mind. She had the blueprints theorized. All that's left is to experiment and put it into practice. While she told Nimue that she was going to scan the world, she needed the powers to do so first. She couldn't cycle her destruction mana too much, otherwise the world itself would reject her. She needed an equal amount of creation to offset the destruction. That way she can use both energies without being expelled from the world. Flying into the sky, Shiro made sure she was far from the ground in case she was to release a pulse of energy that could affect the safe house. Closing her eyes, she clasped her hands together and visualizing what she's about to do. In order to cycle both energies at once, I need to have them fight in a tug of war that never ends with no victor or loser. This will be the core of my mana, the foundation of my being, Shiro thought to herself as mana surged towards her. In her left, a vibrant gold creation mana shimmered. In her right, the dark purple and red destruction mana lashed out. She had to fuse the two together without making them clash. If creation flowed to the right, destruction will follow. If destruction flowed to the left, creation will follow. A constant loop. Within the mana realm, Nimue watched as the walls twisted and morphed as Shiro experimented with how her body circulated her mana. Noticing a change in the deepest part of the mana realm, Nimue made her way over and saw Shiro's new core slowly forming. The shape of the core was unlike anything she had seen before. When she first met Shiro, the core was essentially a ball with a singular type of energy rotating within. The destruction mana that composes Shiro's entire body. However, there were now two energies fighting for dominance, creation and destruction. Due to how powerful Shiro's destruction mana was, she had to gather the creation mana from the world itself. In order to attain the balance she wanted, she had to fight against the mana of this world and come to a draw. Nimue, you don't need to worry, Shiro said suddenly as Nimue jumped slightly and glanced back. Seeing Shiro standing there without a worry, Nimue felt panic rising. Wait, what about your body? Why isn't your focus out there? Nimue shouted, quickly preparing to heal Shiro's body. She realized that there was nothing wrong. Just watch. Shiro grinned. Taking a deep breath, Shiro narrowed her eyes and started to compress her mana realm. Watching the walls of the realm wail in pain, Nimue wondered what Shiro was planning. Crack. A suddenly crack appeared within the realm, causing Shiro to cough up a bit of blood. Your mana is going rampant. Trust me, it's fine, Shiro shouted out as she compressed the realm further. Furrowing her brows, Nimue could see how serious Shiro was right now. The focus in her eyes. She had a goal she wanted to reach. She knew the path and she knew the difficulties. Knowing everything about Shiro, Nimue trusted her. You want me to help you break the realm, right? Nimue said as Shiro nodded. You could have just told me. As someone who's been helping you maintain stability, who do you think knows more about this place? Nimue asked as she raised one hand up and clenched it in a fist. Bang. In an instant, hundreds of cracks formed around the realm like a pane of glass shattering. Only I know how fragile your realm truly is, and where the weak point is to cause it all to tumble down. Nimue chuckled as Shiro smiled back before turning pale. With her realm now unstable, she was akin to a nuclear bomb that could blow up at any moment. Say, Nimue, remember how I haven't caused you to flip out in a while? Shiro laughed softly. What's that supposed to mean? You make me flip out plenty already. Nimue clicked her tongue and crossed her arms in front of her in annoyance. You might want to look outside. Narrowing her eyes in suspicion, Nimue glanced out and froze up. Around Shiro, there was an array of densely packed magic circles. However, that wasn't what surprised it. It was the fact that the magic circles were a small hologram of what's being drawn over the skies of this world. Using her satellites as anchor points, Shiro had encased this world in a giant magic array. With how many runes were being drawn simultaneously, Nimue could see the array blocking out the sky in a blanket of golden runes. I was worried about being discovered, but if they sensed me everywhere in the world, they wouldn't know where I am, would they? Shiro grinned as she slammed her hand down. Activating the whole array, Nimue watched in horror as the entire world's mana supply was being siphoned towards the sky. And *pound caret, and caret $pound and caret Shiro thurf CKR, are you actually trying to kill yourself? Nimue screamed out as she hurried to stop the flow. However, it was akin to fighting against an ocean of mana. There was nothing she could do. Crack. Hearing an ominous crack, Nimue glanced at Shiro and saw her body cracking apart and disintegrating. See you in a bit. Shiro smiled. Before Nimue could react, Shiro's entire body shattered into dust, and she was nowhere to be seen. Before she could even say anything, she felt lethargic as the mana in the entire world was drained to zero before replenishing. Clutching her head, Nimue glanced up at the sky, her heartbeat increasing rapidly as she didn't know what to do. The array that was proof of Shiro's work slowly faded with the replenishing mana levels. ####. Elsewhere, a group of people looked at the sky with a serious expression. They could feel the sheer scale of this spell and the potential destruction it could cause if it was an attack. Should we be concerned about this? One of them asked as they turned towards a green-haired elf who only gave it a brief glance and chuckled. You don't have to worry about it. You'll get used to it. She smiled fondly, remembering the good old times. You mean get used to the stuff you pull? My stunts will look childish compared to what Shiro can do. Lyrica replied while making her way back inside the building. She's finally here. I wonder how she's going to react when she sees me again. She chuckled with a soft blush on her face. After arriving in this world, Lyrica had spent much longer than she had initially expected. When she first changed class to Empress of Samsara, she could still be called a budding flower. Her beauty held signs of youth like a gentle wind. But now, she was in full bloom. Biting her lip, Lyrica tried to hide her signs of excitement, but failed. Seeing Lyrica gain a bounce in her steps that was never there before, soft laughs and a wide smile on her face, her companions looked at each other before turning back to Lyrica. She's excited. They all thought simultaneously. ####. Floating in the sky, Shiro was currently in spirit form as her mortal body had disintegrated. Usually, this would mean that you died. However, it was the opposite for her. She had broken her body on purpose so that she could rebuild it from the ground up with the new core as the foundation. Nimue is unable to see her right now, but it's fine since she'll create her new body now. Looking at the core in her hand, Shiro's lips curled up into a grin. The moment she shattered her body, she gathered all of the destruction mana within her and drained the world of creation mana to create the new core. Shaped like a Mobius strip, both creation and destruction mana are weaved together into a mixture of gold and purple strands that form the body of the core. If she was to use creation mana, destruction would fight back, causing motion within the core and generating extra power, and vice versa. If creation pushed, destruction would pull. If destruction pushed, creation will pull. The delicate tug of war had been established with no winner, and the balance wouldn't be tipped. Naturally, she still needed to be careful of how much of each energy she absorbs, but it has become much easier to control. Snapping her finger, mana started to branch out from the core and rebuilt her mana realm. Compared to before, it has become much harder for her realm to collapse even with Nimue's knowledge. If she wanted to rebuild her body again, it would be much harder to accomplish. Maybe I should take advantage of this chance. Shiro thought to herself as she could change her natural appearance however she wanted. She could make herself taller, change her natural hair color, and so on. In the end, she decided to stay with her current appearance. After all, this is the appearance that her friends and family were familiar with. Plus, if she changed her physical specs too much, her fighting power would take a hit since it'll take a while to get used to the changes. Habits are hard to change after all. As she watched her body being formed in front of her, Shiro could see that the flesh and bones were now many times stronger than before. Due to the new core, mana is constantly circulating at a high speed within her body. If she had to describe it, it'll be like seeing a spinning disc, but it was in fact two blades that would knock everything aside or cut it apart if it came into contact. Her body now had a natural barrier that was resistant to mana. Of course, that also means only strong healing spells can affect her. Weak spells would just bounce off this barrier. But with Sylvia's capabilities, her spell should take effect. Snapping her finger, Shiro finalized the creation of her body. As her soul and body fused together, Shiro could sense a new form of power surging within her. The world now felt familiar to her, as though she could use all the mana as she willed. However, seeing as how Nimue didn't notice that she was back, Shiro tilted her head to the side before tapping her shoulder. Crying out in shock, Nimue punched towards Shiro's direction out of surprise. Raising her hand, Shiro blocked the punch with ease as Nimue paused before tears welled up in her eyes. "Dumbass, at least tell me if you were going to destroy your body," Nimue cried out as she punched Shiro a few times. Naturally, they were soft as Shiro apologized and waited for Nimue to calm down. While waiting for Nimue to calm down, Shiro discovered an interesting boon with her new body. Her aura was now indistinguishable from the world. Unless you were looking at her, you wouldn't realize she was there through mana sense. Once Nimue calmed down, she started to examine Shiro's new body. Just like Shiro, she noticed that Shiro was now practically indistinguishable from the rest of the world. Jumping into the mana realm, Nimue understood immediately that she no longer needed to worry about the realm collapsing due to the fact that it was constantly being reinforced by both creation and destruction. In other words, she could now slack off inside the realm without worrying. "What else do you think changed with that?" Nimue asked curiously as Shiro shrugged. "I'm not sure. I've been trying to pull up the system interface, but it's just been saying under maintenance." Shiro shook her head. She wanted to see if her class and race had changed now that she reconstructed her body, but she couldn't see her stats, nor could she get into contact with the administrators. It was definitely strange, but Shiro guessed that they were probably trying to figure out what's going on with her body. Though another possible answer was that they're on the side of creation. Shrugging her shoulders, she decided to test out the capabilities of her body some more. Waving her hand, she conjured up a wave of nanobots. However, seeing the giant swarm, Shiro couldn't help but blink her eyes in surprise. All she wanted to do was make a small wave, but instead she conjured a tsunami. However, thinking about it for a moment, Shiro understood what had happened. Due to the way she designed her new core, whenever she used one energy such as destruction to create nanobots, creation would fight back to maintain the balance. Thus, this swarm was created from both creation and destruction. I think I'll need to be careful of how much mana I use now, since no matter the spell, the cost will be doubled. Though, the effectiveness will also be doubled, Shiro muttered. "So you basically lost the ability to hold back?" Nimue asked as dread filled her heart. Thinking back to the area where Shiro essentially eradicated mana to the point it couldn't be repaired, she couldn't help but shudder. After all, Shiro was now much stronger, and her spells now have double the efficiency? Yeah, if she tries the laser again, Nimue wouldn't be surprised if it destroyed the world. Seems like it. If I stack all of my berserk skills, my awakenings, throne world, and everything else, I wonder how much power I can muster, Shiro said as her lips slowly curled into a grin. Shrugging her shoulders, she'll leave the experimenting for later. After all, she wanted to find Lyrica right now. Closing her eyes, she sent out her senses and realized the world has become much clearer. With her new connection to creation energy, she could sense everything that harbored creation energy within them. It was essentially turning on X-ray to see the whole world. She could see everything and anything. Flicking her finger, the satellites surged with energy as Shiro activated Error's power and tried to find signs of Lyrica. Compared to before, she no longer had a headache or side effects while digesting all of this information. It flowed naturally, and she could memorize everything, subconsciously sorting the codes into categories and filtering them into her library of knowledge. Shiro picked out the codes that had connections to Lyrica. Watching Shiro do all of this, Nimue couldn't help but wonder what kind of being Shiro was now. She could see everything that happens in the world and sort out the information. She could see their history using error and even modify them. While the term God was used loosely due to the fact that gods were powerful beings in this world, perhaps Shiro was nearing the realm of true God. While they couldn't say she was all-powerful, she was certainly reaching the standard of all-knowing. The way she holds the information. I suppose one could say she's similar to the system. Nimue thought to herself. Shiro, what is it? What do you think of your current abilities? You can give out skills using your nanobots. You can give certain classes, and even retain information in a library. Don't you think it reminds you of the system? Nimue asked as Shiro thought about it, and nodded her head. Excellent. I suppose you are right. With how the system is designed, it's natural that my abilities will look similar. I'm basically a human computer. Plus, Error's power is now part of me, so being able to deconstruct the world into basic code and numbers, it's obvious that I'll start resembling a mini-system. If I knew who made the system and the hierarchy around it, it'll be easier for me to figure things out. Shiro shrugged. However, I've tried to use Error to read the system before, but it hasn't worked. With admins and different levels of restrictions, it's hard to gain the full picture. Is that so? Since I was thinking, if you're becoming similar to the system, do you think you can cancel events, such as the New Age? What if you could remove the roles bestowed on the queens and empresses, the gods even? Nimue asked as she had countless questions regarding Shiro's new power. Thinking about it, Shiro opened her mouth. I think if I can find a way to modify the code of the system, I could potentially bypass a lot of restrictions. However, you need to remember that we don't know who made this thing. The power of the system is beyond our comprehension right now. Where does it get all this power? The skills? The records of history, and so on. The source of the system is something hidden by a veil, and honestly, I'm not sure if we're ready to see the other side just yet. It was based on a hunch of hers, and her sixth sense was rarely wrong. She understood that trying to find the source of the system was a task that she wasn't ready for just yet. I see. In that case, then fair enough. Nimue nodded her head. If someone as reckless as Shiro didn't think they were ready, then whatever was on the other side was not to be trifled with. Watching Shiro filter through all of the information available to her, Nimue found herself with nothing to do. After being busy with helping Shiro maintain her body all this time, she now had more free time than she was used to. Laying down on one of the islands, Nimue glanced up at the ceiling of the Manhwa realm and closed her eyes for a nap. If there was nothing to do, she might as well get some sleep in and enjoy the break. Meanwhile, Shiro continued to filter through the information from the codes. Reading everything that had been happening in this world, Shiro couldn't help but smile softly. While it was limited to certain key events for now, it was enough to give her an idea. Lyrica appeared in this world around the same time that world's balance started to tip in destruction's favor. Without much knowledge on what was happening, Lyrica tried her best to help out and worked closely with creation variants of their friends in this world, including Shiro. They were surprised at first, and it was hard to convince them to accept her help due to her identity. After all, why would they trust someone from the side of destruction, the side that was causing this disaster to befall their world? It took almost a year before Lyrica could persuade them since they were too weak to kill her and hardly listened. Lyrica spent most of that time avoiding the party, but once she got their trust, sorting out the safe houses became much easier. With her knowledge of what Asharia is like, Lyrica provided ideas and explanations on certain contraptions and items, while Aram would get her mages to invent similar objects for use. Of course, Lyrica couldn't stop the fact that they were dying from mana corruption, even if her identity was special due to her connection to Samsara. In recent years, Lyrica had been sorting out provisions for each safe house and finding ways to potentially revert or reduce the influence of destruction on this world. She was one of the main reasons as to why this world hasn't completely been destroyed yet. However, there was another who had a similar goal, but her goal was extreme. She was the one who invented the puppets, a way to preserve the soul without being affected by destruction, an amalgamation of creation energy. But strangely enough, the codes for her seem incomplete, like a puzzle that was missing the key pieces. Her existence was an anomaly in the world's code. I'll probably figure it out later when I talk to Shiro. With Lyrica, Shiro thought to herself. Ignoring the anomaly for now, she tracked down Lyrica's current location. Unsurprisingly, she was at the biggest safe house located in this world, the new capital and the last wall of defense. The safe house of Uriai is where she'd find Lyrica.